All right, guys, so a bunch of different Elon, Trump, and Doge updates that I want to get to here in this video. We're going to start off with Donald Trump literally outright calling himself a king. Then we're going to get to some of the latest on Elon putting Social Security on the chopping block and justifying it in the dumbest way imaginable, getting things just basic facts completely wrong. Then we're going to get to the latest on the GOP budget bill as they continue trying to push for a massive handout to wealthy elites in this country at the expense of social programs for working class people. So let's go ahead and get into it. This was a clip from, I believe, yesterday, ahead of Trump and Elon's Sean Hannity jerk-off fest over on Fox News. And here we have Trump basically saying that he's signing an executive order to further consolidate power into his hands. Let's go ahead and watch this clip and I'll explain a little bit of this.
Lastly, we have another executive order that President Trump signed relating to independent agencies. This executive order would establish important oversight functions in the Office of Management and Budget and its subsidiary office, OIRA, supervising independent agencies and many of their actions, and also reestablishes the longstanding norm that only the President or the Attorney General can speak for the United States when stating an opinion as to what the law is.
Okay, so only the president and the U.S. Attorney General can say what the law is, right? Not Congress, not the judicial branch, none of that. And then on top of that, basically he's saying there are no more independent agencies. I get to control everything. So the SEC, the FTC, the FCC, these are no longer independent agencies, right? That are supposed to be somewhat politically neutral. These are now under my purview. So again, a further power grab and a consolidation of power that Trump is trying to pull off here with this executive order. Now, to clear it up for people in terms of like how he's viewing this, right? He tweeted this out a few days ago. He said, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." Excuse me? So like, how are we supposed to interpret this other than he believes that as the president of the United States, the law simply does not apply to him? He is a king, if you will. Now, he further cleared this up by tweeting this out over on Truth Social. He said, congestion pricing, referring to this thing that just happened in New York, but that's separate from what we're talking about today. He says, congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. So he's consolidating power. He's saying, he who saves his country does not violate any law. So basically, I am your savior. Don't question anything that I'm doing. None of it can possibly be illegal, which thanks to the Supreme Court, he's kind of not wrong about now. And then he's also calling himself the king. Guys, how are we supposed to interpret this kind of rhetoric along with the actions of the Trump administration so far, basically usurping the power of Congress, ripping up the federal government, mass firing of federal employees and installing loyalists to do his bidding, attacking judges, attacking and suing the media to get them to fall in line? How are you supposed to interpret any of this other than an authoritarian power grab? And not just one for Trump as an individual, but clearly it's really more of a power grab for the oligarchs. It's a power grab for guys like Elon as much as it is for somebody like Trump. And you guys should, maybe I'll link this down below in the description because everybody should go read this piece on Curtis Yarvin, right? Go Google Curtis Yarvin if you haven't heard of him before. He's sort of like the philosopher go-to for guys like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and several other of these oligarch tech bros, right? And in this piece that I'll link down below, this guy breaks down in his Substack how this connects exactly to what Elon Musk is trying to pull off now. Curtis Yarvin essentially wanted there to be a CEO dictator of sorts. I mean, he literally outlined how if Americans want the country to be fixed, then they need to get over their dictator phobia, right? And so he thought of somebody like Trump as the chairman of the board who gets to pick the CEO dictator. And he picked Elon Musk. And so Elon Musk is effectively at this point our CEO king, or our CEO dictator or monarch or whatever you want to call him. But again, go read that piece that I'll have down below if you want to try to make sense of what this authoritarian power grab actually is and the philosophy that goes behind it, right? Now we move on here because I got a lot more that I want to get to. They're now going after Social Security. So on the campaign trail, obviously Trump was promising to do all of these massive cuts to everything and to save everybody so much money, and I'm going to get prices down and all of this and that. But on the back burner, he said, I'm not going to go after Medicare and Social Security, right? We're not going to touch those programs. Now, that was a political calculation because he knows that these are some of the most effective and popular programs in the history of the United States. They pulled millions of elderly Americans out of poverty, wildly successful programs. And so he knew that he couldn't come out and say he wanted to go after Social Security. And even now he's saying, we're not gonna really touch it. We're just gonna go after the massive fraud within these programs. So here was posted by Kyle Kalinske. The latest is that the Social Security Commissioner reportedly was ousted after denying Elon Musk access to sensitive files. So the acting commissioner, Michelle King's departure from the agency over the weekend after more than 30 years of service. She was at the Social Security Administration for 30 years. And it was initiated after King refused to provide DOGE staffers, these like 20-year-olds running around shredding up the federal government right now, access at the Social Security Administration to sensitive information. So shoving this person out from their position because they dared to deny DOGE staffers access to sensitive information. And then following that up, we have this full-blown assault from Trump and Elon attacking Social Security, saying that there's all of this widespread fraud that Elon Musk and DOGE have managed to uncover. So let's go ahead and watch this Trump clip here, and then we'll get to more on the Elon Musk side of this.
We have a very corrupt country, and it's a sad thing to say, but we're figuring it out. Now, the good thing about Social Security and what I read is if you take all of those numbers off, because they're obviously fraudulent or incompetent, but if you take all of those millions of people off Social Security, all of a sudden we have a very powerful Social Security with people that are 80 and 70 and 90, but not 200 years old. So it's a very positive thing. How about over here? Yeah.
Okay, so again, he's saying we're not going to cut Social Security for people who are not committing fraud and actually deserve it, but he's saying they can save billions and billions of dollars, that it's this massive fraud that's going on. There are millions or tens of millions of people who are currently getting Social Security checks that are getting them fraudulently, right? And he's basing this off of what Elon Musk has been going around saying. So what is Elon Musk talking about here? It's pointed out by Will Stansel. Some of the recent tweets here. He said, according to the Social Security database, these are the numbers of people in each age bucket with the death field set to false. Maybe Twilight is real, and there are a lot of vampires collecting Social Security. And he posts this random screenshot of a table that we don't even know necessarily where he got it from initially. We now have a little bit more information on that, and I'll explain it here in a second. But the table basically shows that there are millions and millions of Americans who are reportedly over 100, 110, 150, 190 years old, who are getting Social Security checks. That is the implication of what Elon Musk is saying here. He continued to attack Social Security in this response to this person who said 394,943,000, but the total population of the US is 334 million. And he said, yes, there are far more eligible Social Security numbers than there are citizens in the United States. This might be the biggest fraud in history. He's saying there is so much rampant fraud that's happening in Social Security that it is the largest in history. Now, you'll notice something about this tweet, which is that the numbers that he was posting don't really seem to coincide with the actual population, not only of people who are receiving Social Security benefits, but with the total population of the United States of America. Meaning, I don't know, if you were to think about it for like 2 seconds, that maybe there's something off about these numbers, right? Maybe these numbers aren't actually saying that there are tens of millions of people who are getting Social Security payments that don't deserve to be getting them, right? Now, to follow up on that, some of the backstory here in terms of what we're talking about, we had this here from the Upshot, the New York Times. Millions of dead people on Social Security. The agency's own data says otherwise. So they say the nettlesome issue here is it's largely unrelated to the question of who receives Social Security checks today. The agency publishes their public data about the beneficiaries, including by age, and there simply aren't tens of millions of people receiving retirement checks who appear over the age of 100. There are almost 90,000 of them. So again, remember, this table is saying there are millions, over 10 million people, close to, I think it's like 19 million people who are over the age of 100 who are receiving Social Security checks. That's the claim that Elon Musk is making. The actual number, over the age of 100 is about 90,000. This is the table of, the age breakdown of who is receiving Social Security checks here. The bulk of them are people who are in their late 60s, early 70s, right? They continue, though. They say this chart covers the nearly 52 million Americans receiving retired worker benefits in December of 2024. So 52 million receiving retired worker benefits. The numbers that Elon Musk provided would indicate that there are tens of millions more than that are receiving this, right? They say these are the people who paid into Social Security system over their working lives and who now collect what most people think of as Social Security. The Social Security Administration makes a smaller number of payments to dependents and widowed survivors of those retirees and to disabled workers and their dependents under a different trust fund. The total number of people receiving benefits last year was about 68 million. The table that Mr. Musk shared on social media over the weekend showed about 20 million people in the agency's database over the age of 100. 20 million people, and with no known death, including 3.5 million people in their 120s and 1.3 million people in their 150s. The numbers he mentioned appeared to be from a system called Numident, the Rosetta Stone-like computer database that contains basic information on every Social Security number ever issued. It covers a far larger universe of people than all Americans currently receiving Social Security checks. Starting to see the problem here? They say the agency's inspector general found in a 2023 report that nearly 19 million people in the Numident appeared over 100 years old and did not have a recorded death. So the SSA concluded that almost none of them were receiving payments from the agency. In fact, that was part of why the agency argued that it wasn't worth the expense to clean up the information about people who largely died before the advent of electronic records. So basically what we have here, and we'll get to a little more on this here, but essentially we have like a basic data issue, right? With this outdated system that they're using, and a system where they're not necessarily cleaning out all of the information on people who died because they died before the advent of this kind of electronic record keeping. And this has nothing to do, keep in mind, with actual checks going out to actual people. So the numbers that Elon is talking about are just like people who are recorded in the Social Security systems. It does not mean that they are getting Social Security checks, but he just assumed, because he doesn't know what any of this data means, and he's sending in these 20-year-old Doge staffers who also don't know what any of this data means. He just assumed, oh, everybody in this system must be collecting checks. So there's tens of billions of dollars in fraud that's being committed here. Because he's too ignorant or too narcissistic to actually try to figure out what's going on before he goes on social media to attack Social Security, to try to justify slashing it. Now, they got a quote here. They say, Elon Musk did not discover the problem in the Numident, said Kathleen Romig, the director of Social Security and Disability Policy at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and a former advisor at the Social Security Administration. They say even to call it a problem is exaggerating. It's an issue, as the IG report makes it clear, but it's not a problem in the sense that these people are not receiving benefits. They say this is just a propagandist looking for something out of the ordinary. And that's basically everything that Elon has been doing. I'll give you a couple more examples of that here in a minute. Basically, they're just either making shit up out of whole cloth, like $50 million are going to Gaza to fund Hamas bombs, right? They're just completely making shit up, or they're just completely misinterpreting things, or they're lying about the amount of money that they're actually saving from some of these cuts. I mean, it's just a complete clusterfuck. Now, a little bit more background on just how embarrassing this mistake or this lie is here from Elon. They say the database that Musk took the screenshots from listed almost 400 million people, which is more than 5 times the amount of people receiving benefits in 2024, 5 times the amount of people. It's also again, significantly more than the entire US population. You would think that the smartest genius on earth, Elon Musk, would be able to figure out that maybe there's something wrong with these numbers, right? If the total amount listed is more than the entire US population. They say the fact that the Social Security system contains millions of entries from people who are dead is likely distinct from a potential COBOL-caused error and is also not news. And again, they say this report that was written by the SSA's Inspector General in 2023 found that 98% of those over 100 in the Social Security databases are not in receipt of any benefits. 98% of those over 100. Now, keep in mind, there are some people who live to be over 100 and are collecting some of these checks. So it's not going to be 100%. But he's implying that there are like millions of people over the age of 150 who are collecting these checks. It's just a complete lie. They say the report added that the database would not be updated because it would cost too much money to do so. So maybe you could make an argument that they should update the system, and maybe that'll cost a little bit more, but it'll make things easier to understand. But you cannot make the claim that there are tens of millions of people who are receiving fraudulent Social Security checks. They say, quote, Doge is going into all these agencies with largely unfettered access, with a wrecking ball and no understanding of the business logic and structure behind the code, database, and configured business logic. Related payment systems and integrated decision trees poses a real threat, a real risk to the privacy and personal data of millions of people across all of those records. They continue, they say Musk, during the Oval Office press conference, which was attended by his son, claimed that the payments to 150-year-old was part of the billions, maybe even tens of billions in corruption and waste that the Doge effort had already uncovered. But just like the condom shipments to Gaza or payments to Politico, Musk's claims of Social Security fraud seems to be a gross misrepresentation of what's actually happening and why. Again, that's exactly what all of this has been. It's either completely made up bullshit, it's misunderstood bullshit, or it's stuff that they are lying about in terms of the amount that they're actually saving. Now, to give you an example of that, here we have this breakdown from Electric Futures, where he gets into some of the exaggerations that Elon Musk has been putting forward through Doge in terms of the amount that they are actually saving here. He says, after several delays, Doge has finally posted its purported savings. Why did it take so long to create a simple web page with a 1,000-row table? Who knows? Let's dig in. So the headline number is they're claiming that they saved $55 billion. They list the savings per nixed contracts. This should be easy to verify then. So he continues saying, the first thing I did was add up the saved column for all canceled contracts and real estate. The numbers are 16.5 billion and 0.14 billion respectively. Odd, since almost all the purported savings come from contracts, we'll focus on that. The single biggest ticket item is a DHS, Department of Homeland Security contract listed as saving $8 billion. Wow, that's a huge contract. Actually, no, it's $8 million. Huh. They must have tried to automate scraping scraping the FPDS form and failed. That means we're down already $8.5 billion in savings. So this continues, this aspect of this, right? They basically, I guess, as a part of their calculations, either lied or got something wrong and claimed that an $8 million contract that they had supposedly canceled was actually an $8 billion contract that was canceled. Now, people noticed this when they were looking to fact check the data, that it only says 8 million. I mean, you can see the number right there, 8 million, right? Not 8 billion. And then after that, we get this, right? After this comes to light. So as pointed out here by Adam Cochran, Elon or his team went back and changed this line item in the FPDS system to match his $8 billion fuck up after getting called out. Meanwhile, the USA spend record still shows $8 million, and the initial FPDS file can be seen on archives as 8 million. They are literally altering protected government records to cover their incompetence, also proving that this was real and that they really fucked it up. But this is also, as he points out here, straight up criminal. It is illegal to alter these protected government records in the way that they are doing it right now. So, like, not only are you lying or you're incompetent and you're getting things wrong to the tune of billions of dollars to try to convince people that you're saving them so much money, but then you're going back and illegally altering records to try to cover up your incompetence, your fuck up. I mean, this is where we're at, guys. Now, if you wanted to actually go after, I mean, I've made this point so many different times, but if you actually really were serious about going after waste, fraud, and abuse, and keep in mind, what Elon Musk is doing right now, they're not actually going after fraud. They're not going after corruption or abuse. If you find any real corruption or fraud, you should be trying to bring cases against people, right? To charge people with crimes for committing that fraud. They're not doing that. What they're doing is they're basically picking out a bunch of different things that have been legally passed by Congress to be funded, signed into law by the president, and they're saying, we don't really agree that this should be funded. we politically or we ideologically disagree with funding going to, prevent HIV in Africa or whatever. So we're going to stop this funding. Now, this is totally illegal and unconstitutional, but it's also not, they're not even finding fraud. They're just finding things they disagree with politically and then claiming that it's waste, fraud, and abuse. If you think that it's just wasteful spending, that's one thing. And then you go to Congress the next time that there's a budget bill, or if you want to go and address the Department of Education or one of these other agencies, you go through Congress, you bring it through legislation, and you try to get it defunded if you don't think it's worth spending money on any given thing. That's how you would do it. They're not doing that. They're just shredding the government to pieces based on their own whims, based on their own incompetent misunderstandings of some of these things that they're cutting. Now, again, if you actually wanted to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, real fraud that's going on in our government, maybe start with the Pentagon, who just failed their 7th audit in a row and have an $824 billion budget. I mean, think about the damage that Elon Musk has already done to the federal government, effectively destroyed the National Labor Relations Board, destroyed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, trying to destroy the Department of Education, USAID, NIH, all of these different programs that they're trying to utterly obliterate. And they're still, even that, if we take their bullshit $50 billion number at face value, not even getting to a fraction of what the Pentagon budget is. And by the way, this is a low estimate. It's really closer to $1 trillion if you include like funding for nuclear weapons and things like that. You're still not even getting to a fraction. Even though you've mass fired thousands and thousands of government employees, you've ripped these agencies to shreds, you still have not even scrapped the bottom of the barrel for what you could potentially get in the Pentagon budget. And again, even that $50 billion in savings that they're claiming isn't even real. It's not even a real number. So this would be one of the places I would start. Again, the same Pentagon that can't account for 63% of its nearly $4 trillion in assets. They cannot account for a vast majority of their $4 trillion in assets. Now, Elon and Trump are claiming they're going to look into the Pentagon next. If we know anything about Elon Musk and Donald Trump, do we really believe that they're going to eat in to defense contractor profits, to the profits of the military-industrial complex? Do we really believe that? Or do we think maybe they'll come out and they'll say, look, we found this DEI program in the Army and we're going to get rid of that. And look at the millions of dollars we're saving off of that. It's going to be the latter, right? And that's part of this broader conversation that I've been trying to explain to people is like, they are using the same playbook that many corporate Democrats use, where corporate Democrats will use woke language and virtue signaling and culture war topics to distract from the fact that they're in the pockets of wealthy billionaires and corporations, right? Don't talk about class war, as somebody like Bernie Sanders was trying to do. Don't talk about that. Let's talk about how woke I am because I'm Nancy Pelosi and I'm kneeling in kente cloth. Now, Republicans are doing the same strategy as that, but in the reverse. It's like jingling keys in front of MAGA, right? Hey, look, we got rid of this DEI program, right? Hey, look, we're deporting migrants. Hey, look, we got rid of trans people. We're saying that trans people don't exist anymore. They're fucking jingling keys in your face to distract from the fact that they're slashing programs that are designed to benefit average working class people. And at the same time, refusing to go after actual fraud that is happening in our government. And at the same time, that they're also proposing, as the Republican Party is now trying to re-up the 2017 Trump tax cuts, $4.5 trillion in a tax giveaway to the ultra-rich in this country. And they're doing that at the same time as they're trying to cut programs like Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, food stamps, right? So the game that's being played here could not be clearer. It could not be clearer. You have an unelected billionaire, the wealthiest man in human history, who is ripping up agencies that he has a personal conflict financially and legally, a conflict of interest with. You have Trump, who's stacked his cabinet with lobbyists and donors and billionaires, and they are ransacking the federal government. Do you really think that they're doing that on behalf of average working class people? No, of course they're not. They're doing this on behalf of their wealthy billionaire buddies. It could not be clearer. But unfortunately, like, there are so many people who are trying to justify this as if it's going to benefit them. This is not going to benefit you. Okay? Now, we continue because, shockingly, as pointed out here by David Pakman, although the Republican budget does include massive tax breaks for corporations and billionaires, it does not include some of the key promises that Trump was making to working class people on the campaign trail, including no tax on overtime and no tax on tips. So this was something he was saying repeatedly on the campaign trail to try to convince people that he's a populist, that he's going to fight for average workers. Not included in the budget bill, which Trump has been endorsing. We also have at the same time, I mean, in terms of just like the chaotic nature of all of this, guys, we just recently, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago at this point, we had another crash, guys. There was already a few weeks ago a like horrific crash that happened not far from me here in Washington, D.C., where a plane collided with a military helicopter and fell into the fucking Potomac River. And everybody on board died. And that's after we've already had all of these different plane incidents in Boeing and all of these other stories we've talked about. And then just yesterday, we had another plane that crash landed in Toronto and flipped over on its side, or upside down, on the runway. Now, thankfully in this, I don't believe that anybody died somehow, miraculously. Nobody died. There were some injuries. But how long is this going to continue happening? And at the same time as this is happening, instead of trying to put forward some new regulations or to enhance, aviation safety, to increase funding to some of these programs that need it, Trump is doing the opposite of that. They say here, FAA staff fired over the weekend included personnel that worked on radar, landing, and navigational aid maintenance, among others. Hundreds were fired just weeks after the fatal crash in DC killed 67. One employee said that they were harassed on Facebook by Doge prior to being fired. So as planes are like falling out of the fucking sky and doors are flying off midair, we have Trump trying to mass fire FAA workers. We also have this, and I'll finish off with this latest one. Here from NBC, USDA says that it accidentally fired officials working on bird flu and is now trying to rehire them. So, I mean, guys, this is part of the reason why, for example, like egg prices are so high right now is because there's massive bird flu that's going around, right? Just ripping through animal populations. And they, in their process of just chaotically trying to rip apart everything as quickly as possible, they fired a bunch of officials who specifically were working on bird flu. What the fuck are we doing, guys? What the fuck are we doing? Now, again, I'll just reiterate the point to finish off the video here, guys. What is happening could not be more obvious. If your concern is to get down the debt and the deficit, or if your concern is about government spending and waste and fraud and abuse, you wouldn't be doing it in the way that Trump and Elon are doing it, right? You wouldn't have a GOP that's pushing forward an absolutely debt-exploding $4.5 trillion in tax cuts to billionaires. Vast majority of it will benefit the top 1%, the top 0.1%, the top 0.01%. This is not addressing government spending. It's the opposite of that. It's the opposite of that. And in order to try to justify that or to offset the cost of giving a massive handout to your billionaire buddies, you're slashing programs like Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, food stamps. You're deleting programs like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau so that more Americans are going to get ripped off by financial institutions. You're getting rid of the Department of Labor so that more Americans are going to be unable to try to form a union or are going to face, more potential exploitation from these capitalist organizations. You also have his recent OSHA, Occupational Safety and Hazards Agency, I believe is what the acronym stands for. But they're essentially tasked with making sure that workplaces are safe for Americans. And the guy who Trump just appointed to lead OSHA is a former executive for UPS and Amazon. Like, this is the most brazenly corrupt administration in American history, and that's saying a lot. And if you watch my channel for any length of time, you understand this is not a partisan thing for me. I'm perfectly willing to call out Democrats, Republicans, independents. It doesn't matter. Anybody who is in the pocket of the billionaire and millionaire class, I'm going to be calling them out. It just so happens that Trump is so brazen about it. and so obvious about it that there is no way to even really compare it. There is no way to exaggerate what's going on here. This is just a full-blown, out in the open, hostile takeover by the oligarch class in this country.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me. Everyone is saying